Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Erin Viner.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom.
In our top story, satellite images reveal renewed work at Iran's Isfahan and Fordow nuclear facilities, both of which were attacked during the war with the Islamic Republic last month. David Albright, who is the founder and president of the Institute for Science and International Security, says that activity has been detected at one of the Isfahan tunnel entrances, and a portal that was previously blocked is now open. According to Albright, it also appears that new road construction is taking place at Fordow, although so far there hasn't been any observable activity at the primary tunnel entrances leading into the enrichment facility. The renowned American physicist and weapons expert has repeatedly cautioned that without neutralizing Iran's underground capabilities, enriched uranium stockpiles inside the reinforced tunnels may still remain accessible.
The Houthis are at it again. The Iranian-backed terrorist group vowed to attack any ship under any flag that deals with Israeli ports. A Houthi spokesman warned all shipping companies that if they did not cease doing business with the Jewish state, their vessels would be targeted by the terrorist army's missiles and drones in what is being called the fourth phase of the naval blockade against Israel. The Red Sea is a critical shipping route through which an estimated $1 trillion in goods passes annually. Meanwhile, Iran's proxy militia in Yemen may be planning to invade Israel. The news outlet Israel Hayom reported that the terrorist group recently completed training for the attack. Israeli security officials are monitoring the threat of a possible Houthi maritime or land assault that could target the port city of Eilat, situated on the Red Sea that also borders Yemen.
Dozens of foreign ministers gathered at the United Nations in a renewed push for the two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The United States and Israel boycotted the confab that was hosted by France and Saudi Arabia. The administration of U.S. President Donald Trump scorned the effort as unproductive and ill-timed, a publicity stunt that comes in the middle of delicate diplomatic efforts to end hostilities and are in fact far from promoting peace. The conference will prolong the war, embolden Hamas, and undermine a real-world campaign to achieve peace. Danny Danone, Israel's ambassador to the UN, said that the organizers of the event are disconnected from reality, adding that they should instead be demanding the release of Israeli hostages in Gaza and working to dismantle the Hamas terrorist organization.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other top Israeli officials have strongly condemned the announcement by French President Emmanuel Macron that France will formally recognize a Palestinian state at the United Nations General Assembly in September. Netanyahu described the step as a reward for terrorism. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich urged Israel to respond by implementing Israeli sovereignty over the historic regions of Judea and Samaria. Leading Dutch politician Geert Wilders, an outspoken supporter of Israel, mocked the French move, saying, "Good luck, Macron and France. Happy suicide." France is home to Europe's largest Jewish and Muslim communities. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the United Kingdom would also recognize a Palestinian state in September if Israel does not end the war in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu said Starmer is prepared to reward Hamas's monstrous terrorism and punish its victims.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has categorically rejected claims of starvation in the Gaza Strip, denouncing such reports as a bold-faced lie. He did so during an address at a Daystar TV conference in Jerusalem, attended by the leader of the White House Faith Office, Pastor Paula White, and hosted by Daystar President Joni Lamb. The Israeli premier stressed that his nation has continuously enabled humanitarian aid to enter Gaza throughout the duration of the war, while insisting it is Hamas that has been preventing the distribution of supplies in the lawless territory, robbing and stealing it so Israel can be falsely blamed. Prime Minister Netanyahu also took the opportunity to highlight the special relationship between Christians and Jews, describing it as a partnership bonded in faith, in history, and in tradition. which is now jointly facing a battle for the truth.
Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, also weighed in on the Gaza crisis. Huckabee lashed out at the United Nations, the New York Times, and the Hamas terror group, asking them if they are happy now. He said, "I am sure Hamas is." The American diplomat insisted their lies and propaganda destroyed the ceasefire deal, tried to discredit the safe and functioning American Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, emboldened Hamas, and resulted in complete chaos. Huckabee added that saddest of all, the hostage families are left with prolonged grief.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz is pledging urgent humanitarian support and medical aid for Druze residents in southern Syria's Suwaida region following the massacre of innocent men, women, and children by jihadist fanatics. During a meeting with the spiritual leader of Israel's Druze community, Sheikh Muwaffaq Tarif, Katz vowed that Israel will not allow further harm to be inflicted on their kindred in the Arab state, reaffirming recent actions by the Israel Defense Forces aimed at stopping the bloodshed being waged by troops loyal to the Syrian regime.
The Israeli Air Force and the defense establishment are monitoring with concern the desire of countries in the region to purchase F-35 stealth aircraft from the United States. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Bahrain, and Morocco have expressed interest in acquiring the state-of-the-art warplane. Selling the stealth aircraft to other countries will present a challenge to the IDF's qualitative military advantage over other armies in the Middle East. Security experts believe Israel may have to recalculate its course. The Israeli Defense Ministry is now monitoring the F-47 aircraft project. Boeing will build the sixth-generation fighter jet. It's expected to enter operational service in the United States military by the year 2029 at a cost of $170 million per plane. At this stage, the Americans are keeping the F-47's capabilities secret.
The Spanish Vueling airline has made headlines for forcibly removing the director of the Canary Club Jewish summer camp and dozens of Jewish children from a flight in what is being viewed as a serious anti-Semitic incident. The youngsters, who range in age from 10 to 15, told Spain's Jewish-focused newspaper that they were kicked off the plane for singing songs in Hebrew. The airline alleges that the group displayed a highly combative attitude, although other passengers who were not associated with the kids reported that they were well-behaved and polite. Spanish Transportation Minister Oscar Puente has been accused of hate speech for referring to the group as Israeli brats when, by the way, they are citizens of France. Amichai Chikli, Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs, branded the incident as a clear case of anti-Semitism on the part of the airline. It should also be noted that the pilot of the Vueling flight, Ivan Chirivega, was the flight instructor for two of the terrorists responsible for the 9/11 attacks on the United States.
And in other archaeological news, researchers from the Israel Antiquities Authority have uncovered the first ever flint blade manufacturing workshop in southern Israel. The 5,500-year-old site is located near the modern city of Kiryat Gat. The discovery has yielded unprecedented insights into what scientists are calling the Canaanite blade industry. The findings include large flint cores from which extremely sharp, uniformly shaped blades were produced. These tools served multiple purposes as knives for cutting and butchering and as harvesting implements. The town of Kiryat Gat, known in the Bible as Gath, was one of 5 major cities of the Philistines. The biblical city of Gath was the hometown of Goliath, who came to do battle with David, as recorded in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 4.
A stunning gold ring and a pair of earrings were just discovered at an Israeli dig site in the ancient town of Susita by Eddie Lipsman, a volunteer from abroad. Dr. Michael Eisenberg from Haifa University, who is leading the excavation team, said that he believes the ring likely belonged to the daughter of a wealthy family and that the earrings may have been a burial offering. The items date back to the Roman period 2,000 years ago. Susita National Park is located on the Golan Heights, overlooking the Sea of Galilee.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Nicole Yoder. She is the Vice President of Aid and Aliyah for the ICEJ. Nicole, thank you for being on the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little about what is the work of the Vice President of Aid and Aliyah at ICEJ?
So the Christian Embassy is involved with aid, social and humanitarian projects in Israel, and it's my job to process all the different aid donations, requests, and projects that we do.
There's a lot of need on the ground now. Since October 7th, the ICJ has been very much involved in everything from helping people who lost their homes to people who lost their businesses to actually fixing new communities. Can you tell us something about those projects?
It's been very varied. You know, in the beginning, it started with short-term, immediate emergency aid, and then as people who were evacuated started to move into housing that was temporary, it changed again, and then we moved into a kind of a rebuilding phase. So at the beginning, it was equipment and classrooms and all that kind of, first aid for people who moved. Now it's been rebuilding things. And then when things started again with Iran, it went back to the beginning again. It started to be the emergency stuff. So when the war broke out, of course, there were many reserves called up, and there were a lot of people whose businesses were in trouble. And so that was helping with funding for small businesses and families who suddenly didn't have the income that they needed to help them get things on track. It was helping with trauma treatment and actually even renovating different spaces so that there could be an expanded response to trauma treatment.
Well, I know you're doing a multi-million-dollar project to help the people in the outskirts of Gaza who were affected on October 7th. Can you tell us about that project specifically?
Absolutely. There's actually a couple of them. But some of the hardest hit kibbutzim are in Kibbutz Be'eri, Kfar Aza, Nir Oz. And in Kibbutz Be'eri, we have two really large projects. One is a youth activity center that was completely demolished because the terrorists made it a base. And we're going to be rebuilding that. And then there's also an elderly facility where they're going to repurpose that whole section and make it a place where the older people of the community can come and have rehabilitation and social activities.
In June, we were attacked by Iran with over 500 ballistic missiles, and it did a lot of damage to buildings and communities. Are you involved in that process as well?
Absolutely, although we had already quite a lot of things going on. So we're starting off back now, with, for instance, one of the hard-hit areas was Bat Yam, and also Alei, the Disabled Children's Center, took a direct hit. And so we're working in those areas, providing summer camps for kids. You can imagine you've been evacuated from your home, you're in a one-room hotel, and you've got to figure out your life and start to rebuild, and what do you do with the kids? And they've all faced trauma, so we've gotten involved with the summer camps, we've gotten involved with grants for families, for emergency in the beginning. Alei, totally destroyed new facility, severely disabled children needing to get new equipment again for them. So there's just a variety of ways in which we're involved.
International Christian Embassy is synonymous with Christian support for Israel here on the ground in Israel, and people call you all the time with a variety of different projects. How do you figure out where you want to focus your efforts? And then also, how do you make sure you don't get too stretched too thin so that you can't do the proper job with all the demands?
It's very challenging. You have to be able to say no, unfortunately, because you don't want to stretch yourself too far. On the other hand, when you have Christians around the world who are interested in wanting to help, it's a huge, huge blessing. And more funds did come in during the war because people understood the urgency of the hour. At the same time, you have limitations. And so we look to develop relationships and friendships around the country. And so actually, we had already been very involved in the south of Israel for more than a decade with providing protective shelters and other emergency equipment. So when the war came and it was focused in the Otef, in the Gaza Belt region, we had a lot of connections on the ground already that we were able to work with and start moving right away.
With all the extra work that you need to do, are Christians answering the call? Are people saying, hey, I understand Israel's under attack, we want to support Israel, and we want to work with the Christian embassy? Are you seeing an increase in that?
We did see an increase during the war. It's not going to stay at those same levels probably indefinitely because people really, really responded. And we do still see a response with the attacks from Iran, but we could always use a lot more because there's so much to do on the ground.
The ICEJ also does the largest tourism event in Israel, the Feast of Tabernacles, and tourism has been hit so hard during this war, but now flights are coming back. What do you think is going to happen for the big ICEJ Feast of Tabernacles?
That's the million-dollar question, Josh. We're wondering because anything could happen. We're waiting to see what's going to happen with the international flights. Listen, if those international flights are available and flying, I think our people will come, and we really anticipate a really good Feast of Tabernacles this year.
People think that a lot of Christians will come to Jerusalem to celebrate what God has done during this war. Do you see God's hand in the protection of Israel and the defeat of our enemies?
What was it? I was just talking with a friend today, and they were saying, these are unusual and interesting times we're living in. And then the response was, these are biblical times. You'd better stay awake. And yes, we've definitely seen the hand of God. Who could have imagined that we would go through a war with Iran? And despite the destruction that did take place, to have relatively lower numbers of casualties than we could have expected. They could have been in the hundreds or thousands, and thank God it's 30, and we count every life as precious and valuable. But it's definitely a miracle what we see happening here, and all that's happened to change the Middle East, absolutely.
Nicole, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
This is a historic moment, and Israel needs her friends around the world right now. So God bless you, and thank you for your prayers and for your support, which enables us to help many, many Israelis who need it desperately right now.
Thank you, Nicole, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now, the truth from Zion.
Qatar presents itself as a moderate force in the Middle East, but their actions speak louder than their words. Qatar is one of the biggest supporters of Islamic fundamentalism in the world, bankrolling and providing safe haven to terror organizations like Hamas.
Hamas's leadership are staying in five-star hotels in Qatar and are allowed to operate with impunity.
These criminals are not hiding. They're being treated like royalty, all the while plotting the next large-scale terrorist attack. The most confusing part is that Qatar is supposed to be an ally of the United States. Washington has close diplomatic ties with Doha. Qatar houses the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, home to 10,000 American troops. Qatar may try to paint itself as a neutral mediator, but in reality, they are fueling the flames of conflict. October 7th was the largest single genocide of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. 1,200 men, women, and children were brutally mutilated, raped, and killed. 253 others were taken captive. While some women and elderly people were released in November, the majority of the hostages remain captives in primitive conditions in Gaza. Most are Israeli, but some are American, and a few are citizens of other countries. The United States, Egypt, Israel, and Qatar are working to negotiate terms with Hamas terrorists in hopes of a second and final hostage release. Qatar has made no progress in negotiating a deal to free them, despite having direct lines of communication and even control over Hamas. If Qatar was a true ally of the United States, the country would have already secured the release of the rest of the hostages, especially the American ones.
We need to pressure Qatar in order to force Hamas to release the hostages being held in Gaza. If Qatar wanted to, they could get this done in a matter of hours.
It's been more than half a year, and yet innocent people are still suffering underground in terror tunnels in Gaza. Qatari banks send billions of dollars to the Hamas-controlled enclave. Officials literally hand suitcases full of cash to terrorists in Gaza on a monthly basis. A recent investigation by experienced intelligence professionals from Israel and the CIA in the United States found Qatar to be a non-neutral negotiator. The probe was commissioned by legal representatives of the families affected by the events of the October 7th massacre. The findings highlight long-standing knowledge within U.S. intelligence circles regarding Qatar's nefarious activities that have never been adequately addressed. The lack of repercussions for Qatar's behavior led to consequences that even exacerbated previous conflicts, like the Arab Spring, the resurgence of the Taliban in Afghanistan, and the empowerment of Hamas. The report confirmed that Qatar's support for terrorists culminated in the genocidal war against Israel. Another dangerous element in this deadly conflict is Qatar's influential worldwide Al Jazeera network. The news media company spews misinformation about Israel and gives a major platform to terrorists. Although Al Jazeera promotes itself as an independent, unbiased news network, the entire operation is funded by Qatar's oil-rich government. Al Jazeera allows the worst of humanity to share their lies and spread the ideology of radical Islam. An Egyptian cleric, Yusuf al-Qaradari, served as the spiritual leader of Hamas. He publicly encouraged suicide bombings and worked to legitimize killing Israeli women and children. Despite his well-known proclivity for violence, Qaradari was given a weekly TV program on Al Jazeera. It allowed him to share his hate-filled messages with the gullible masses. An unlimited budget allows the network to turn out quality content with a high capacity for lies and misinformation. Al Jazeera journalists on the ground in Israel and Gaza have been involved in supporting the agenda of Hamas, sharing sensitive information they have learned in Israel in order to assist Hamas in its genocidal war. Al Jazeera denies allegations that it spreads hate and supports terrorism, but research proves the opposite. Qatar also uses its enormous wealth from oil and natural gas exports to financially contribute to academic institutions in America, propping up professors and administrations who subscribe to anti-Israel sentiment and blatant anti-Semitism. The international community needs to hold Qatar accountable for its sinister and public support of terrorism. Qatar cannot be allowed to hide behind a facade of diplomacy while aiding and abetting organizations that thrive on terror, violence, and extremism. Up next, the ICEJ Report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Today I'm at Kibbutz Urim on an animal therapy farm. You see behind me a few of the horses the ICEJ has donated to enable children to come here for trauma therapy. The animal corner, the horses therapy area, it's all going to be expanded and renovated, and the ICEJ is a part of this special project. We invite you to come and learn more about it and join with us too.
Since 1980, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem has been a voice of Christian support for Israel and connecting the global church to the land of the Bible. Headquartered in Jerusalem, the ICEJ has taken practical action to stand with Israel, such as helping Jews return to their ancestral homeland of Israel, caring for Holocaust survivors, providing bomb shelters for vulnerable communities, fighting anti-Semitism around the world, and inviting Christians to discover Israel for themselves.
שלום, אני עודד, אני מנהל את החווה פה באורים. אני מנהל את החווה הזאת משנת 2020. התחלנו במרץ 2020, בקורונה, והקורונה הביאה איתה הרבה אתגרים, ובגלל הסגרים פתחנו, סגרנו, ובסופו של דבר המשכנו, לא עצרנו. ובעצם המטרה פה היא לתת מענה מההתחלה, לתת מענה לאוכלוסייה ולקהילה פה במועצה אזורית אשכול ובמועצה אזורית שער הנגב, ואנחנו בעצם חווה טיפולית. המענה הוא מענה טיפולי, הוא תומך, הוא לעבוד עם ילדים עם קשיים, אם זה קשיים רגשיים, קשיים מוטוריים, זה היה ההתחלה, לשם זה הקמנו את החווה. ב7 לאוקטובר התחילה פה המלחמה. אנחנו כולנו פה מהאזור של העוטף, כולנו פה מכירים את האזור טוב, גדלנו פה. אני אישית מקיבוץ כפר עזה, והמשפחה שלי מכפר עזה, אז הטראומה, אנחנו מכירים אותה טוב מאוד, ממעגלים מאוד מאוד קרובים, וגם כל הצוות מהאזור, כל אחד מיישוב אחר. ובעצם בשביעי החווה נעצרה, נסגרה. היום ההתמקדות שלנו היא בטראומה, ואנחנו עוברים הכשרות לעבוד בטראומה. אנחנו בכלל, כל החווה עוברת שינוי. אז פינת החי בעצם זה מקום שהוא כיום הוא מקום לא טוב, ואנחנו רוצים מאוד מאוד לפתח אותו. אנחנו מאוד רוצים לקחת אותו ולהפוך אותו למשהו שהוא היה פעם מאוד יפה. אם זה מבחינת המתקן, שאנחנו רוצים לעשות מתקן טוב, מגרש טוב, סוסים טובים, אז זה גם משהו שאנחנו עושים, ואנחנו עוד פעם אני אגיד שאנחנו נעזרים באנשים טובים שתורמים ועוזרים לנו לפתח ולהקים את הדבר הזה. אני רוצה מאוד להודות ולהגיד תודה רבה גדולה לשגרירות הנוצרית שעוזרת ואיתנו. אפשר להגיד לך תודה.
After Hamas brutally attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023, the ICEJ has been actively standing with Israel and her people through advocacy and urgently needed aid projects. Now is the time for Christians to turn their love for Israel and the Jewish people into real action as never before. Your donation will help in various relief projects for families, businesses, and whole communities in this ongoing recovery process. You can help deliver bomb shelters to at-risk areas, provide necessary supplies for first responders, provide trauma care to those shaken by the conflict, and help the hardest hit areas renovate and rebuild their communities. Visit ICEJUSA.tv to donate online or call 1-800-910-6355 and give your generous gift today.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Erin Viner.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.